for Recruitment Entrepreneur. I basically look after India and the Middle East, although I'm based out of London. Background, you can probably see from the whites of my face and my hair, I'm a 30-year veteran in recruitment, started off as a trainee, also lived and worked in about 3 different continents. So definitely been involved with talent, pretty much throughout my life. Built businesses, from the ground up, been in teams where we were a listed business, where we had over 3,000 people. So every business was all about people, and that's what's been driving force, I guess, for recruitment. It's all about the people. So everything from hiring to training to development to retention to actually building exit strategies for, senior people in the business when they get to a certain point. So I'm really looking forward to this session because we've got people from all walks of life here. I mean, Martina, with your TA background, Alex, living and working in Dubai and doing what you're doing and building your own business now, and the audience, which I'm sure we'll get some good input from as well.
Amazing. So I think the first point that would be good to discuss would just be to understand kind of the talent landscape, of an overview of the market and any challenges that we have seen as, I guess, recruitment business owners in attracting talent. So Anil, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. I think, look, the overview of the current talent marketplace, and we'll just focus on recruitment, recruitment businesses and the staffing space. Typically, if you look at the origins of a lot of the talent in recruitment that has moved around the world, it's typically come from either the UK or the USA or probably Europe. And some of the markets around the world has become, very prevalent that the people have moved around and sort of migrated to those countries to then develop those same strategies. And often what happens, when you look at the localized markets, and a bit like Dubai, where you two are, there's a lot of cultural differences where the traditional model that we've been so used to doesn't always translate in country. And for example, if I give you an example, when we look at how you manage people from a cultural background for sales, right? Sales is not always done the same in every country, but there is some similarities. How do you train and develop them to ensure you bring them through? So the landscape, I would say, it's a lot more diverse now. That's definitely one thing, because you have people coming into recruitment from all walks of life, where typically in the past, most people that got into recruitment just started off entering recruitment as a trainee and then went through the training and development and the ranks to achieve management or director level positions. But typically now you've got people pivoting from other industries and sectors and getting into recruitment as well. So you'll have industry experts that may get into the space as well. It's a very interesting landscape, because I think how to attract talent is very different today compared to what it was maybe even a decade ago. Today it's very much about your brand, your values and the things that people want to join and the flexibility of the work environment. And they're not all driven by the same goals that I guess we've had in the past, which has all been about making loads of money in recruitment. Some people genuinely want to build businesses, make a difference, into what they're creating. So it's a very different landscape today. And I'm sure it's going to change again in the next decade. And certainly how we find talent has changed massively. There's a lot of different nuances now in the way we would even present the brand, out to the open market to attract the right talent. Before, it was just about hard work, perseverance, and find those people, they will join you because you have a business that you're growing. Now it's a little bit different. I think you need to present yourselves with a more value-driven, more, I would say, career progressive type of approach, rather than where before it was about just an individual contributor approach.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Anil, and I completely agree. And that definitely aligns with what I've seen on the market as well, in terms of, speaking to candidates day in, day out. They really want to be a part of something and they really want to kind of see themselves grow with that business. It's not just about the money. I think you know, we need to get the basics right as employers. We need to have, you know, competitive salaries, you know, good working environment, good commission scheme. But it's about so much more for recruiters now. Like I said, they want to be part of something. They're really excited to be building. They want to, you know, a lot of people would love to kind of, you know, set up new desks and kind of see themselves progress with that company, their career path with that business. Alex, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think you're right. I think things have changed and move along. There's the whole buzzword of social sourcing right now. And like you said, every CEO globally is building a brand. So I think brand, we always talk about sort of brand in the market. I think it's so critical that everyone knows that personal brand, that brand of the CEO, the employer value proposition, and the brand of your company and how you position that are now so important in this market. I think we all know that the Middle East is a super challenging place to attract and retain talent. Like, there is a lot of talent here, but there's a war on talent everywhere, as we know. But there's, again, to get good recruiters here is hard. And I think what I saw for my last, you know, year and a half speaking to people through Recruitment Entrepreneurs and the sort of challenges of the local market and hiring is that price point. Like you said, to fight for the really, really top sort of 360 recruiters, you've got to have enough money in the bank to do that. And for startups, that's very, very challenging. So, you know, getting creative with sort of how you do that. We're talking about challenges in the market. I think, you know, and opportunities. I think opportunities in terms of where we are and the diversity of the talent pool might help you, you know, find sort of, we know how important having a diverse workforce is for sort of productivity. And we're also in the middle of the world where you can tap into other resources. So, you know, hiring and retaining talent here is tough. But again, Neil makes a good point of, you know, recruitment obviously came really out of the UK, the US, there's lots of markets there. We now have, from COVID, a much more global remote workforce. So from a, you know, the sort of talent market currently, you're definitely able to access a much wider talent pool if you go outside of current locations. You don't need to be on the ground here as such. A lot of people want to move here, which is, again, a positive spin on it, let's say, than just talking about sort of some of the negatives and how hard it is. But yeah, I think you've got a lot of changes in the market in terms of how they operate, doing 360 or 180 that you see in the market as well.
Yeah. And what would you say, Alex, would be like the basics to make sure that a company is able to attract that top talent? What do they need to be doing? Strategies?
Yeah, I think you need to be, I think, you know, personal brand is everything. Positioning yourself the right way in the right channels is sort of fundamental to, well, let's start actually at the beginning, which would be know who you are and what you want to be. I love reading Simon Sinek and everything about start with why and all that leadership stuff. And start with why, for me, is the #1 place to start. It's like, who are you? What do you want to be? What's that guiding light? Money is always the pursuit, I think, of a greater goal and a greater purpose. And we talk again about Gen Z and what all these new age, you know, individuals coming up the ranks are looking for. And that is impactfulness. How can they make a difference? They want flexibility and remote. So what do you want your culture to be? There's still a massive divide, I think, in, you know, people that are very, very strict and hell-bent on, we want people in the office working from home. And there's massive value in that from a you know, a shared information perspective. But also there is a huge move, and that's what my business is based on, is a very much a remote workforce. We have our partners here, but we're moving towards, you know, having resourcing hubs in different locations, because from startup businesses, you know, cost overheads here are so great. You need to, and cash is king when you're starting, you need to find creative ways of finding talent that is more cost effective but still quality, and setting that up. So again, start with who you want to be, get very, very clear on what that looks like, and then how you position that to the market. You know, who are the people you're trying to attract? Where are they based? Where are you happy to be for them to be based? And make sure that that messaging is exceptionally authentic to the market and consistent. And you're always talking about, you know, what your culture looks like, what you're doing. Employees are sharing stories of other employees, sharing stories about their experience. That's kind of some of the places I would certainly start in.
Amazing. And what I would add in terms of like process and actual kind of strategy, I guess, is obviously, you know, when you're attracting talent, you said there is a war on talent. We need to make sure that these processes, when you're interviewing someone, are kept really tight. The most success I've seen with clients where, you know, I send them a CV of a great recruiter at 7 p.m. on a Thursday night, and then they've got an interview, a phone call lined up the next day. And then the second round interview might happen on a Sunday afternoon because that's when the candidate's available. If you want to get the best talent as an employer, and that's across the board, not just in recruitment. You know, we give the same advice to our clients. I think as recruiters, we should also take it sometimes and just make sure that, you know, if we want someone, we pull the trigger, we make sure that we do hire them, that the candidate feels like they're wanted, the process is quick and efficient, and, you know, the business is lined up, the interviews happen one after the other, and we can get to offer fairly, because that's still, you know, time kills deals. Everyone says that. So I think that's one of the most important things, beyond obviously, you know, all the basics that you do in the background, like you said, personal branding and employer branding, and making sure that, you know, people want to work for you and there's enough information for them to kind of make that decision when they do the research before their interview. And, you know, that it's a good, enticing place to work with commission, with potentially hybrid working and that kind of stuff. But, you know, keeping that process tight and making sure that you're able to prioritize hiring, I think, is the most important, because a lot of people say they need to hire the great people, but then they end up losing them in the process because they've taken 2 weeks between interviews.
I think Anil can back me on this one, but I'm pretty sure James Khan, Anil, doesn't he profess he spent 60% of his time at Alexander Mann hiring for his team? Now, obviously, that was a more scaled business, and when you're a startup, of course, you're bootstrapped, you've got to focus on getting cash in the door, getting clients, but you have to be focusing on where are those hires coming from, who are you engaging with, what do they look like, map the market. You know, those things are absolutely fundamental to just make sure you build into your week, I would say.
Yeah, and the businesses that get the best talent from us as a Rectorec are the ones that are getting back to us quickly, give us availability, are flexible. You know, candidates enjoy speaking to them, we enjoy speaking to them, they give us feedback quickly, because that's where we see the most success, and that's where, you know, our candidates want to work, because we also have the most to say about these businesses because we know them so well as well. So I think another tip would be maybe build a relationship with a good Rectorec if you're struggling for talent. But Anil, have you got anything else to add in terms of these sort of more tangible strategies that we could advise people on?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to follow up on that. You know, I think you hit the nail on the head. There has to be a strategy around how you go about, you know, because typically a lot of businesses, certainly the younger businesses, you know, just look at hiring as almost an isolated, you know, activity rather than a strategy to build and develop your business. So, you know, when you're looking at building, you know, any sort of strategy, you've got to have the traditional approach, yeah, coupled up with innovative stuff, because we know technology is a very big part of it today. You know, if you're using AI technology, you know, there's many ways you can incorporate AI and automation tools to streamline the recruitment process. You know, that's assuming you've got the pipeline coming in, so you can also use other strategies to ensure you're filling your pipeline. So how do you do that? Looking at local networks. So if you look at the Dubai market, there are going to be networks of people where they're obviously gathering, they're, you know, sharing information. If you can get into those networks, you can find the types of people you want. Obviously, referrals goes a big way, you know, towards that. Optimizing then, how do you source your candidates on top of that? Because those are just one set of funnels, and you've got to have a diverse set of, you know, candidate sourcing funnels. It cannot just be one size fits all. And Martina, you sort of mentioned one of them, which is using, you know, external recruiters and people like yourself that do recruitment to recruitment. So there's that, there's job boards, there's social media, there's networking events. You know, there's so many different channels today, which is very different to where maybe it was, you know, a couple of decades back, where it was just advertising. You just advertise and hoped your advertisement will bring in the response, and that's not what it is today. Given that there's a, you know, there's a lot of active job boards now, it's definitely worthwhile looking at those job boards, where people tend to forget, you know, that those job boards even exist. So look at the job boards, utilize them, because it's definitely going to give you some knowledge and experience of what you can, you know, find. LinkedIn is a brilliant source, right? We all know, everybody on this call is sitting there, you know, they know that's the first place you would go to, because not are you finding active candidates, but you're also finding passive candidates. You know, those are the ones that are probably going to get influence rather than the active ones. As Martina, you said, they, you know, you have a conversation today, before you get to them tomorrow with the next step, they've already got 3 or 4 interviews going on, and then suddenly it becomes harder for you to take them through the process because there's so much more choice. Alex, you touched on personal branding, and I think that's really a key piece. Is not just personal but employer branding as well, because we don't build a strong enough, picture of our brand to our audience, and if we don't do that, the audience just doesn't get to know about it. And you can do things like testimonials, from your employees, from your clients, talking about your culture in your business. Those are the key things that people are going to buy into, which will help you, again, find more candidates. Focus on diversity, right? Again, diversity and inclusiveness. We talk about it a lot, but how many of us actually think about that when we're going out to hire? We're just reacting to what we're finding rather than actively going out and targeting, people of a certain diverse or inclusive mindset. So, how do we reach out to them? Are there niche job boards for those? Are there niche recruiters that are operating in that space? Are we specifically asking for referrals of people with more diversity inclusiveness that we can bring to our business? Do we look at targeting it in that way? Is our business friendly, to ensure we have that diversity and inclusiveness in our business? Then engage with talent communities. I mean, Martina, you're a perfect example, right? I mean, you're working with not only us, when it comes to me, if I were looking for somebody, you're working with me, but you're talking to 50, maybe 60 other businesses, right? Do they know somebody that can potentially help my business? So how can we nurture those communities to work together a bit more cohesively? And then you hit the nail on the head. One thing I really love about what you said is about being timely, because you have to move quickly and you have to do what you say, and also offering constructive feedback, when you are going through the process, because those 2 things are really important from the candidate's experience, through the journey. One, coming back to you quickly and effectively enough, and then secondly, giving that person some constructive feedback, in terms of how do we do this. And so the last one, Alex, you touched on it, gig workers. How can we adopt and actually use freelancers or gig workers in our business? Because some of the hiring may not need to be full-time.
Yeah, I think just to add to that briefly, actually, because I think the whole networking and relationship building is so important these days and ties in with that whole social sourcing and being out there. Like, we're in a new age now where, running networking events, even that are sponsored by you, running workshops, running webinars like we're doing now to pull sort of people together is, these are other things that you could do. It showcases your expertise. You're probably doing it in your own market to boost your brand awareness to your clients. Well, you can still do that with your sort of EVP and, run things that actually, put your face out there, because if people don't know you and your business, they can't be excited about working with you, if you like. So even adding, I know it's time consuming, but adding stuff like that can be a great another funnel or channel to bring talent in.
Absolutely. And that's kind of a lot of the time, especially in Dubai, for businesses that are based out here, I speak to candidates who are thinking about moving here in a year's time or a year and a half, or they just kind of reach out, but they still keep an eye out on what the businesses out here are up to. So they might follow, if you say they're a tech recruiter, and they might follow a few of the tech recruitment companies out here. They might connect with the founders or the managing directors. And then a lot of the time, actually, it happens where they're kind of aware of what the market's like. They're aware of what the companies are doing, and they'll reach out to me and they'll say, oh, I've seen this business. I think that it seems like they're doing some cool stuff, or seems like they're doing well. I'd love to chat to them. So kind of making that employer brand where, you're sharing lunch clubs and you're sharing what the team gets up to, and, sharing the success of the team and what the team are doing and how things are at the company, what the office looks like, all that kind of stuff. I think, it's playing the long game, and it's not going to pay off, immediately, where people are going to start banging on your door, but it just builds an idea of the company in people's heads. So when they are ready to make that move, you'll be on top of and that's how I found some of my clients out here as well. Before I moved out, really, it was just me kind of keeping an eye on the market and was like, oh, these guys look cool, I want to work with them. They look cool, I want to work with them. Sometimes they look cool and I don't want to work with them, but most of the time I do. And I think, it really helps companies stand out, because not everyone kind of puts the effort into that employer branding from, you know, to really attract talent. It's a lot of the time comes off as braggy from recruitment businesses as well, where, you know, they're just trying to brag about, oh, we've done this, we've done that. But actually, when you really kind of make it about the team, I personally can see it on LinkedIn, and I think people can sense it as well and see that it's done to attract talent and showcase that they're a great place to work, rather than bragging to other business owners saying how much money we've made.
I've seen some businesses do this actually really, really well out here, and they are the ones that are scaling to those 15, 20 people. You know, they are the ones that are attracting talent. I think we can't forget either, a super good point is that your employees are your best brand ambassadors. So it's all well, we're talking to CEOs who want to, you know, promote their own brand and their own company, but actually the individuals you hire. And like I said, when I was in-house, part of our EVB program was we were encouraging our employees, and it was part of their profile when they joined, like your expectation as an individual is to promote the business, is to promote yourself, etc., but also to share stories about other colleagues, you know, to show a collaborative and supportive environment. You know, it's to showcase what the experiences they're having at events that you're running, or fun activities that are being dealt with, or, you know, great bonuses that are on offer that they're, you know, really enjoying, but also promoting their own colleagues and what their successes are and personal achievements. But just on a final point with that one is making sure you're evaluating and measuring your success. And then obviously you talked about all the different funnels and channels, and, you know, again, you can't improve unless you analyze what you're doing. So I think once you've got those strategies in place, you know, do look at what your candidate engagement is, what your application rate is, and what your employee retention rate is. You know, how successful is that actually being is super important.
Amazing. And I think that kind of leads us quite well into strategies for retaining talent, because it's all well and good attracting people, but it's a bit pointless if you can't retain them in the business. So obviously recruiters take, especially in the Middle East, they do often take a little while to get up to speed if they have to, you know, switch markets, move into a completely new market. So, you know, what would you guys recommend businesses do to retain those high performing employees that they have worked so hard to attract and hire?
I think this is like one of the hardest things to do out here, isn't it? Because it's so transient, and because of where we are in the Middle East, let's speak about sort of specifically, it's people are here to make good money, to invest, set themselves up with a nest egg. So people are quite open to moving for the next, you know, highest buck or whatever it is. So you really do have to be competitive when it comes to this. I think, again, we talk about, you know, people want to see impact, autonomy. I think as long as you can show people a great experience, if you've got a very well structured onboarding process that takes people through the right way, and you're very clear about who you are, what you want to be, and what your story is, which is one of the biggest things we did, I suppose, at Recruitment Entrepreneur. It's like, you know, we're giving people a story to go to the market with, to level them up, to hire the sort of best talent out there. So when you've got that, and they know what their career development is, what the next steps are, you're being authentic, it's true to the candidate experience when they do start. And you make sure that they know exactly what they need to do to achieve the next level, and they know what to do to get onto the senior management team. I think things like training and development are absolutely critical here. You know, a really robust training and development process, showing them that they get, you know, leadership training, people management training, whatever kind of, I think even let's take it back to the interview process, understanding what these individuals want, need, and what their aspirations are, and making sure that you think about that and you actually care about it sort of every step of the way. I think if you're always showing that that is an important part of you as a business, and they're seeing that, then they're obviously much more compelled to stay and feel a lot more connected to the business and what they can achieve. Obviously, things like competitive, you know, it's all well and good being sort of down to money and competitive commission structures, for example, are super important, but also additional benefits they get. You know, what do you do as an employee? Do you have wellness benefits? You know, one of the biggest things I think that would appeal to me, like I said, I run more of a remote workforce where we do believe in autonomy, unlimited holiday. You know, I want to attract people that just want to do really good work and have the flexibility to do it as and when and where they want. If you're a company that has people in the office, maybe you offer a flexible remote working policy over summer. Like, people want to get out of Dubai in the peak heat. If you give them 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, or even summer, to say, oh, go and work from Europe, you know, as long as you know what you're doing and you're delivering, you know, I think that would be a massive pull for people. So I think stuff like that, getting very creative with how you attract people, understanding your employees, taking time to listen to them, have regular one-on-ones, and making sure that you are doing, doing everything you can to sort of keep hold of them.
Absolutely, I
Inspire
agree.
them.
And what you said at the end, you need to kind of know what your team wants. I think the hardest thing, as founders, I think what people struggle with is they would offer their employees what they want, but it's not actually what the employees want. But Anil, you were going to say something.
Yeah, and I was just going to echo a lot of what Alex has actually said, right? She's basically articulated a lot of the different areas, that you would typically look at. I mean, what when you look at employees, I mean, what's the key thing? I mean, they're obviously already bought into the business. So now, how can you develop them? How can you give them more appreciation, in terms of what they're doing? How can we make their work more meaningful? Then people are engaged by lots of these things, which we don't always measure easily because our measurements are typically the outputs. The outputs are revenue, profit, productivity, activity. These are the things that we typically look at. But what else do they want? We have to listen to, the employees, because every employee is quite different. Not everybody is actually focused purely on the monetary gain. Some of them are really looking at that career development and growth opportunities. And do we have, a good, robust career development and a personal development program for each of those individuals? Those are really the key things that we should be looking at, because every personal development program, PDP, will be independent to that person, which fits into the bigger business. Then you look at some of your more senior people in the business. Of course, there needs to be different things that they're going to be excited about. Are we looking at long-term investment plans? Something where there's either an event or an exit, could be available that you as a founder who's running the business actually has in place for yourself, but what do you have for your senior management? So look at long-term investment plans. There's lots of different ways to do it. There are, shares, there's a real equity, there are options, there's just what we call LTIPs. So there's lots of different ways you can engage to give people real value in the business. Job security, and I think in today's world with all the ups and downs with, with COVID and everything else has happened, how can we provide job security? If we can provide other ways for showing them, their job security, it creates less stress and anxiety in employees. And obviously, if you can do that, they're going to be more engaged and they're going to be more balanced in the environment. And then there's the other stuff like, just collaborative stuff that we do as teams, events internally or competitions. In fact, there was a business in the UK, and I won't name who they were. It was a very successful recruitment company. And I can tell you, they didn't have the best commission plans. They didn't have the best working environments, but 90% of the people that stayed there was because of the culture of the business, and it all was driven around. They used to have a pool competition, so snooker pool, not the swimming pool type thing. They used to have a pool competition, and literally every employee of the business took part of it. But that created so much camaraderie and actually competition outside of the work sort of that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, that they loved the environment and they just stayed in the environment because there was no other business doing what they were doing. They had a pool table in the corner. A lot of businesses would do that, but they had a pool competition that gave recognition and prizes to the people that were finishing in the top 3. So you just got to get innovative with what else your business needs, but every business need is different. There are the basics, but every business and every set of culture and I guess attributes of a business are quite different. So you have to talk to your people and understand what it is that they want from their outputs from the business. Focus on that. It's your people at the end of the day. You've invested in them.
Absolutely, I agree. And one thing that I just remembered from my last job when I was heading up TA in my last company is, sometimes employees won't perhaps give you a negative feedback when it's one-on-one. So what we've actually done is, it was obviously all very, very positive. There was just little things that perhaps came up in the survey, but I've basically designed an employee engagement survey and started running those every few months to track improvement and stuff like that. And it's been, people could put in their suggestions, they could put in any concerns that they have, areas where they might need support, but it was completely anonymous. So I think, if someone is in a larger business, not necessarily kind of want maybe a bit of a wake-up call, I guess, and kind of really get honest feedback from their staff. Obviously, you can't please everyone, and I remember, it can be quite hurtful sometimes, I think, especially when, that business is the founder's kind of baby, to hear certain things. But actually, I remember, in terms of, for example, like we had 2 different offices. We had a London office and we had an office in a different location. And things that came up in the survey was like, oh, we'd love to get both the teams together. So what we did, we planned a trip. We all went to Cornwall and we just had a great time. And it was, everyone kind of met in the business. People built more relationships and stuff like that. So even simple things like that, where, bringing teams together and, just hearing your employees' feedback, I think just that in itself will make people more engaged with the business and kind of make them want to stay, but also listening to those thoughts and presenting it back, the findings back to them, and kind of keeping that transparency of, yes, we do listen to you. I think that's quite that's been a game changer, I think. And that business's retention is absolutely incredible, to be honest. So I think we've done a good job.
Good work.
So anything else that you guys would like to add in terms of retaining? I think, what we could probably talk about is just creating a positive culture. So outside of, all the things such as commission and all the stuff that, we retain people based off, kind of what the business is like. But how do we actually create a culture that's good, especially as we're scaling a business and there might be a bit more hiring and all the kind of hiccups and everything that people go through when they are scaling their recruitment business? How do you kind of maintain and create a positive work culture?
I mean, that's a great question. And I think the first and foremost, lead by example. You've got to have your core leadership team, leading by example. That's probably the number one thing. Don't be afraid to share, the things that you are doing that maybe you don't expect them to do, but they get some visibility in how you're doing it, how you're dealing with some of the challenges in the business. Define core values, right? And communicate them. Sometimes we do these exercises where we say, okay, let's have a culture session. Let's define what our core values are. Let's decide what the culture of the business is. You've done the exercise, and then it hasn't been communicated. There's no point. So, make sure you're defining, but then also communicating, to your team. As I said, leading by example is a very key one. Don't be afraid to do the tasks that you may feel are remedial, but they add a lot of value to your culture and the business. Open communication. This is probably a killer for a lot of businesses, right? Because there's so much going on inside the business behind closed doors, and people get to get a sense of that, right? But foster that open communication in your business. Recognize and reward employees. I know we do this quite a lot with commission and bonuses and things like that, but bringing just like those small achievements and milestones that have been reached, celebrate them. Success is all about celebrating it with your team and your people. The big thing today is this work-life, and I hate the word balance. I always like the word integration, because work-life, harmony. I like that, work-life harmony. But support your employees to be able to achieve that healthy, work-life harmony. Offering flexible hours, doing remote work when you can do remote work. Have wellness programs, right? Again, there was a big fad about having wellness in your business, probably about a decade and a half back, but it's not really talked about as much today as it was when it was going through that little bit of a fad. And then employee development, very key thing, just in constantly investing in employee development. What's their pathway? What's their career development pathway in the business? How can they really achieve that? What does it mean to them, personally? What does it mean to them financially? What does it mean to them for longer term, vision for them? And I won't hark on about this, but again, diversity and inclusion, right? How do we prioritize that in our business? Because that is a really key piece of creating people from different diverse backgrounds, building that core value for the business, which may change the dynamic and actually have a much more healthy environment. So I think there's a lot of different things. I mean, the list can go on and on and on in terms of how you retain people, but it's a combination of all those things. And I'm sure there's many other things, that we're not even talking about on this discussion. So I'd love to hear, from others, love to share, their views. If they've got any pointers, stick them in the chat. If we can hear something from others, that would be great.
And Alex, I guess, how do you go about creating a company culture when your company is fully remote like yours?
Yeah, I was going to say, because Anil's drawn on all the major points there for, what you need to focus on to build a company culture. For sure, I would echo every single one of those as being important. So I suppose the difference is, some of those things are easier to do when you're in-house at a team that is, on the ground with you. But when it is remote, adds a lot of additional challenges, and you want those teams to feel part of your business. So we've just hired our first hire in South Africa, actually, and we also hired our first RPO hire from the Philippines, which was very challenging. There's going to be a lot of learns from that. We've kind of paused that for a minute to realize that we need to be well set up with all of our standard operating procedures. And I think it comes down to sort of contact and making sure that there is those regular touch points, and that they do feel part of it. You have, regular online meetings when it is that, you have a WhatsApp group set up that you're always sharing experiences, wins. Like, again, we're not in an office where we can ring a bell, let's say, but we can put bells on a WhatsApp group and like send memes and gifts and, like, do you know what I mean? Still celebrate everyone's wins and successes from there. So I think you just need, when it comes down to running a remote workforce, which is more challenging, but again, very cost effective for those people setting up businesses, and very easy to do because of where we are in the Middle East and how close proximity we are to a lot of opportunities like this. And I've seen a lot of companies here that I've spoken to run this model very successfully, and other larger companies move from that 360 to having remote centers. And either they will take trips regularly out to those teams to make, if they are larger teams there and it warrants that, you might have one freelancer here and there. But again, knowing what your core values are, making sure the people you hire remotely fit into that ethos that you want. Again, what Anil said, leading by example, setting up WhatsApp groups, setting up regular Teams conversations, having roundups on what they've sort of achieved day in, day out. And I don't know, maybe if you've got a team, let's say in South Africa or somewhere, maybe hiring a shared office so that they can all work together. I suppose things like this are what I would sort of recommend, is, measure their achievements, making sure you're again, to put on what Anil said, recognizing what they're doing. They constantly feel recognized, constantly feel heard, constantly feel appreciated. And there's those regular touch points, and everyone knows what they're doing and what those expectations are, and are being communicated with regularly.
There's a great question just being posted in the chat from Melissa. So thanks for the question. So the question is something that can be really difficult and is isn't often discussed, is having to exit a team member. Often it's best for all parties, but what's the best way to handle it? So I think that's a really good point. So thanks, Melissa, for the pointer and the question. It's something I think, a lot of businesses don't do very well. And we focus on getting great people in. We do our best to retain them. We have all these, innovative ways of keeping them. But then if we get to that unfortunate situation of exiting somebody, how do we do it? Right. And there's obviously the tried and tested. I'm sure, Martina, you have some great, from your TA background, right? You probably have some great, ideas there. But just from my experience and, when I've had to exit people, I think, one of the things is obviously follow the policy. That's the first and foremost thing. If you have an exit policy, make sure you follow that, because it's unfair, to the employee not to follow that process. Obviously, communicate clearly and respectfully, because we often are all in this mindset, I don't like, or this has happened. Everyone's got all these emotions going on, but always ensure that, everything is clearly communicated. It starts with a private meeting, then you have some direct communication that will probably come from it, and then have some empathy and respect for that person as well as the wider business, because you're going to affect other employees in the business, and follow the process. Do an exit interview. Make sure you communicate in black and white final instructions. Make sure there's a proper agreement in place of the exit or the separation in the business. Handle it, handle it effectively, where all the logistics are done correctly. Paycheck, or everything that should be in the paycheck that needs to be there. Any benefits that we have to provide them, up until and maybe post exiting, and then property and access, right? You know, all the stuff that you need them to provide back to you, and you need to switch off systems and things like that, and then communicate. You know, once that is all done and you follow the process, that's the time then you're being open and transparent to the business and the people in your business to ensure that everybody's aware, rather than one fine day the desk is empty and then everyone's gossiping and trying to find out what's happened, right? Then communicate and make sure you're clear on what that happens. And another thing, you know, which I think a lot of businesses do the above, but do sort of a follow-up, you know, post exit, in because you're providing some support. That person was an employee of yours. Give them some support, you know, post that, because you may be able to refer them on to the partners, you know, that maybe you'd refer them on to another business, but just ensure that, you know, you can do something for that person, because they're clearly good enough to be in your business. Just because it hasn't worked out doesn't mean you can actually forget about them and just cut that umbilical cord and say, that's it, thanks very much. You know, be a bit more empathetic with that, and, you know, support those people. So I think there's a lot of good things. To answer your question, Melissa, but I'd love to hear a little bit from Martina. Anything else that you may have, you know, sort of adopted that helped do a more effective exit? Because I don't think most businesses do it very well.
I think I would say, first of all, 100% kind of agree with everything you said. What I would want to add is, obviously no one should ever be blindsided and surprised that they're, you know, being fired, unless it's been some kind of or anything like that. Like, people should know that they're not doing well, that, you know, been given targets or kind of been put on a performance improvement plan. But one thing I would say that I'm quite passionate about in Dubai in particular, with people moving up and moving their whole lives, whether it's from the UK or from Singapore or from Australia or anywhere else in the world, you know, employers should kind of give people chances out here, I would say, a little bit more than you probably normally would. Back in the UK, it does take people a little bit longer to start billing. It does take people a little, you know, it's a big life change for someone's moving here on a Monday or a Thursday and they're starting work on a Monday. Like, give them allowances to kind of get settled into their lives as well. Like, when we relocate people, a lot of my clients, they expect them to suddenly, you know, if they were a £500,000 biller in the UK, they kind of expect them to start performing at that level straight away, and it just doesn't always happen. And I think, you know, it's good when businesses can take responsibility and kind of are aware that it takes people longer to start billing. So they need to maybe, you know, and they've kind of left their house, they've left their friends, they need to like build new social circle, they need to find somewhere to live, they're discovering a completely new place that they've moved to. So I'm just really passionate about not letting people go too early and kind of giving people, I would probably say about 6 months, unless, you know, it's some kind of other issues that we can't fix. But if someone's presenting all the right behaviors and they're trying and they're doing their best, but it's just not working out, just because they're not billing, I would genuinely recommend businesses to kind of work with people and give them a chance, instead of just, you know, ripping off the band-aid. You know, and with that also comes the cost that the business has already bared, hiring that person. Like, you've paid for the visa, you've paid for their healthcare, all the other things. So it might be worth backing them a little bit more than perhaps, you know, a business owner in London would, when someone can just find another job like that. But yeah. Alex, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think those are sort of really good points, to be honest. It's like you said, I mean, it's very difficult for certainly startup businesses or, you know, early stage businesses to especially if those guys are quite costly, to sort of take that hit for 6 months. But you are right, apples are not always apples. Someone that recruits in the UK doesn't always transition here well. It's very, very relationship driven here. And I know people that have moved over or moved their business and have really struggled to pick up work. It's taking them far longer than expected. So I think you've got to build that into business plans and cash flow plans so that you can sort of protect that. But again, based on talking about the, you know, exiting someone, I think, you know, Neil hit the nail on the head. I think empathy is so important, and understanding how that does affect the team around them. And so I used to work in a business, and it was so frustrating. It wasn't actually a recruitment business. It was one of the roles I had in-house, and there was just zero communication about stuff like that. People would just let go, which then makes you think that they don't value that employee. So again, I think getting across, you know, making sure that with your values and knowing that your employees are important, and having every decision surrounding that, or, you know, the way that you offboard someone, the information you get, the communication that happens with that person and the team is really, really important. And I do think the team should be told when things like that happen, because it just instills that trust and respect, that, you know, we're letting you know this, these are the reasons, let people, give people the sort of respect to understand where that decision came from. One, it lets people know that you're not going to carry dead wood. So a lot of the high performers will appreciate that, because a lot of high performers get very frustrated when people are not performing and they're just, they're just picking up their salary and not sort of contributing. And that was the same for normal, regular businesses as well. But also, if you are bringing people over, not giving them the time and support and letting them go in 3 months, that's not going to create a good taste in people's mouths in your culture as well. So be considerate of that, I think.
I just want to, I'm going to challenge that point a little bit, because this is something we see quite often when we're reviewing either existing businesses or we're reviewing people that we want to invest in. Typically carrying dead wood is probably one of the biggest failures of most recruitment businesses. Either we give them too long, or we're indecisive, we don't make decisions quickly enough. And this is something which we should always be a lot more robust on, ensuring that you're following an effective way of evaluating what good looks like inside a business. Then you should never be in a situation where you're just waiting for somebody, giving them more and more time, because you've been clear with initial communication. If there's a lack in performance, as you rightfully said, Martina, you put them on a performance improvement plan, so you put them on a PIP. You then provide support. If there may be some training, there may be some extra resources needed that are missing, you keep on continually evaluating that. But ultimately, if that person is still not performing, you should not, hold on too long. You should make a decision effectively, because you've gone through the processes, you've gone through the support, that individual needs to be provided. The timeline is the timeline, the performance improvement plan will determine, because the outputs need to be there. So whatever change in activity you're asking, to that employee to change should lead to productivity. And if it doesn't, then you have a bigger problem. And that's where I think often we don't make decisions effectively or quickly enough. So it's probably the number one killer for stifling the growth of a recruitment business. So every business we would look at, whether it's already in our portfolio or whether it's somebody we're evaluating, to bring into the portfolio, this is one area we do focus on quite closely, because we realize if you don't measure, monitor, take effective decisions quickly, you will basically burn through cash very, very quickly, which is the biggest problem for early stage, businesses. And even if you look at more advanced businesses, normally in recruitment businesses, I would say 70-80% of the revenue and profit comes from a small group of people, and the rest of them are just straddlers, and they're doing okay to justify a seat in the business, but it's nowhere near the high performance team that is delivering 70-80% of the bulk of the profitability in the business. So you've got to really be quite, I guess, metric driven, as well as the well-being, the personal element of the person. You've got to look at the numbers. The numbers will give you a story. You then support the individual, and if the person, after even supporting the individual, doesn't work, then you've got to make a decision fast. That's a really key part.
Yeah, I think that is fair. I mean, I normally say hire fast, fire fast, but I suppose it's the parameters around that fire fast is making sure it's fair. And it is again about that, isn't it? It's about that authentic communication to the team so that they are aware of what the expectations are. And again, I suppose you need to evaluate whether an individual has the right attitudes, and is it either on your ability, are you a great leader but not a great manager? Do you not have great managers managing your staff? Do you not have the best training and development? There's a lot of factors that go into it, but you make a very, very fair point. We know that hiring the wrong people and keeping hold of them will cripple any business. So I think anyone listening needs to definitely be vigilant to that.
Absolutely. And I will just remind everyone that we're dealing with people, so let's just balance there, because I always say, I mess with people's lives so much with, like, if I recommend a business for someone to work in, for example, like, because I genuinely believe it's a good business. So, there's a balance to strike there, I think, with firing people as well. But in terms of so we're kind of running out of time with the webinar now. Is there any questions from our participants? Is there anything that anyone would like to ask us? Now is the time to put those in the chat.
I think we're good. We've informed them very well.
There's some nuggets to take away there.
Well, thank you so much for everyone's attendance. Obviously, thank you so much to Alex and Anil for joining us as well and sharing your wisdom.
It's great being part of it. So thanks very much for organising it, Martina.
Yeah, and I got a message from, sorry, Alex, for interrupting you, from the RE team that will do a hiring process cheat sheet that we'll send out to all the participants to have a look at after. But yeah, Alex, go on. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, yeah, no, really appreciate it. It's an important topic and something that everyone struggles with. So hopefully they found it highly informative, and hopefully we'll send out, a bit more value add at the end for people to read.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to our next one. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Martina.
Bye.
Thanks, Alex.